We have game 3 here of the mini league against Tracer. Looking at the board, quite a few things jumped out to me at once. So there's Tunnel, and there's a way to discard Tunnel Vault, both your vault and opponent's vaults, and there's also Bishop. So there's some idea of using your Bishop to trash gold to get points. Very standard thing to do with Bishop if possible. Now, there are also other things on the board. There's Stables for draw, Ranger for draw, Herald as a source of draw maybe, and some plus actions. And there's also Dead Center, Sauna, and Avanto. We also have other interesting cards, Apothecary maybe, Menagerie maybe, Duplicate maybe. You could see yourself buying everything on this board here. So what I eventually decide on is to go after the Saunas first, just to get trashing down. I'm not sure how it is I'm going to build up this deck right now, but I believe trashing is the correct way to go. So I believe Sauna is the way to go with that. Your other option is Bishop, but people don't usually recommend that you get Bishop to trash. It just helps your opponent trash and gives you very minimal benefit from doing so. You don't gain anything by trashing with Bishop in terms of deck size because your opponent can also trash as well, most of the time anyway. So we are both going to open with Sauna and Silver and go after these Saunas as much as possible. Me being first player is a little bit advantageous because it means I might be able to win both splits or at least one. However, that is not going to be the case for the Sauna pile. My opponent actually is able to get 3 Saunas because I missed 4 coins on my turn 3. What I did do instead was pick up another silver, so you see me here with 2 silvers. The reason for this is to hopefully try to pair my Sauna with a silver as my opponent did here. So I figure if I put 2 silvers in my deck, the Sauna has a better chance of finding one of them and I can get my trashing going. However, I still haven't found Sauna and silver together and I'm not willing to put another silver into my deck because I think it just doesn't do much for me. The 2 silvers gives me enough money to buy whatever action cards I like on the board, namely the Avantos we are going after. The Avantos first and not the Stables because it obviously combos with the Sauna, giving you a lot of draw, and I don't really feel like giving my opponent 3 Avantos when he has 3 Saunas already. So as it turns out, I do win the Avanto split 3-2. So my opponent has more Saunas, I have more Avantos. So we'll see what we could make of that. Additionally, my opponent is a little bit ahead on the trashing, being able to get rid of all of their coppers here. Not a coppers, estates, and 1 additional copper here. So they have 3 and decide to go for a tunnel at this point. So very obvious intentions. Next I assume is a vault, and next I assume is a bishop, and they will perhaps start a bishop goals or perhaps use the gold to buy other things. Speaking of buy other things, we don't have any plus buy yet in our deck, and I noticed that for my opponent's deck he only has the 1 plus buy, and that is something I am going to fix right away in my deck. I'm going to pick up here after a good draw, finally a good draw, finally I see everything all together. My Sauna doesn't miss, my silvers don't clump, or when they do clump, they clump with all these nice things. Finally able to get a solid turn down, and what I am going to do here is develop a small plan. Ranger first for the plus buy, and then later I still have $8 in my deck. If I draw everything as I did then, I can pick up Tunnel and Vault if I'm able to see everything as I did just now. So that is my hope, my plan in picking up the Ranger there. The plus buy is going to become more and more useful. In fact, it is already useful. For example, here 6 and 2 buys is not trivial on this board. Menagerie Tunnel is reasonable. But what I am going to do here, instead of picking up those 2 things, just the vault, and then next we'll get the tunnel and we'll start to discard golds. Discard tunnels to gain golds, and then we'll start to get more money and see where we could take the game from there. As it is, my opponent still doesn't have a ranger, so he really has to stop and pick up a ranger at some point, I felt, if he wants to start keeping up with the kind of things that I will be doing with the money I'll be putting into my deck very shortly. So he is able to react his tunnel first, getting the first gold, I believe, and is able to draw it right away. But like I said, only one buy, and he is going to sort out his extra gain situation here by picking up a duplicate. Duplicate seems very, very nice on the board. Lots of things you would love to duplicate. Heralds, Rangers, Menageries, Stables. All of these things are excellent targets for duplicate, as well as duchies later in the game perhaps. So here, playing the Vault doesn't really do too much for me, whereas playing the Ranger, even though I get rid of the token, I flip the token the other way, meaning the next time I play it I won't get any cards from it. I'm using it solely for a plus buy, which is really a strange use of Ranger here. But I need to do it in order to progress. Progress here means that I pick up a Herald and a Tunnel. So now I have all the parts to start discarding tunnels to gain goals. I have the Vault and I have the Tunnel. So I should be closely behind my opponent here as he discards a second time successfully for a gold. So the duplicate is going to come down on the mat, and he makes the play of picking up a couple Rangers here, I believe, with the duplicate. So I think this is where he makes the play of picking up the two Rangers. I'm not entirely sure. I think this is, I'm fairly certain this is it. No, I was wrong. He picks up a Herald instead and gains another Herald. So, of the duplicate, of course. So now, let's talk a little bit about the differences between my deck and my opponent's deck. He has these Saunas, which means that if he's able to chain everything, as you are usually able to do after you've thinned out with these Saunas, he has 3 actions to his name in his deck, whereas I only have the 2, as you see here. So the Herald for me becomes a little bit more valuable for me because I need it to serve as a source of plus action. Now I have no way to control whether or not it hits an action card on the reveal, so I just have to rely on chance and cleaning up the deck a bit, and hopefully sometimes the Herald will trigger. So I need to pay close attention to the Herald pile this game because it is going to be quite critical for me. I would like to play a few action cards, a few more action cards, that is. Another Ranger for sure, not necessarily for the draw but just for the plus buy, and I would like to pick up a Bishop at least at some point, and if I can play with a duplicate as my opponent is doing, I would also like to play with a duplicate. However, all of those things hinge on me having enough actions in my deck, so what I am going to concentrate on here for this part of the game is to get as many Heralds as possible. I really cannot allow my opponent to take those Heralds away from me. They would constrict me to only doing a few things with my deck, whereas he has more freedom, more liberty to decide what he wants to do. So here, he doesn't go for Heralds this time. Instead, he stops to pick up a couple Rangers with his duplicate. So now he has the plus buys and a duplicate. He has 2 extra gains to me right now because he has the extra buy from the Ranger and the duplicate, which he's putting down every turn so far. So fortunately, I have caught up in terms of drawing my whole deck. I can draw my whole deck, and there is a lot of reward for being able to overdraw your deck here, which I am able to do quite handily with Vault. Being able to draw more cards means that I can discard more to the Vault and get more money from it. So here, I could have made better use of that Vault. I could have played Ranger to draw 5 cards up, plus my Menagerie to draw 3 cards up. So I could have picked up a lot more money from that Vault. However, I didn't need to do it because I only have 2 buys. What am I going to spend all that money on? I really need another plus buy to start making use of these big vaults that I can get from overdrawing a lot. So that prompts me to pick up another Ranger and another Herald. So here, this is perhaps the one play or the one turn that I disagree with the most for my opponent. Here, what he ends up picking up is a couple Heralds, I believe, and a Bishop. The part I disagree with there is the Bishop. I think that should have been 3 Heralds instead, or perhaps even 4 heralds if he had the money to do that. I'm not sure if he had the money to pick up 3 heralds plus duplicate one. But definitely, I think the bishop was a little bit early. The herald makes him a little bit more consistent and also serves to deny me an extra action, which is pretty important. The bishop he can pick up later. So he leaves a couple heralds for me in the pile, which I will snap up this turn. I really need to. And that does mean that I win the split actually. I win the split 6-4 on the herald. So I'm very glad about that. It makes up for the deficiency in my deck. The deficiency of plus actions in my deck. Hopefully, provided the heralds behave themselves and don't reveal gold all the time. That is of course the condition. Once again, I have no way to control that. Apothecary would help, but it's too late now into the game to turn back for a potion, and I can't really spare the plus buy at this point in the game for an apothecary. So here I make a little bit better use of the vault, but still not the best use of the vault. Again, it doesn't really matter in terms of, because rather I only have 3 buys and $23, and I really just want to pick up a couple heralds and a bishop myself. However, it is good practice, you know, just to see how much you could squeeze out of the vault, because you never know when you might need to be able to squeeze that extra coin from it or so. So here I pick up a couple heralds, top deck in one of the heralds. Excellent for my consistency. Excellent. Speaking of consistency, my opponent falters here, having to play this vault dead. Not good at all for him, and it gives me an opportunity to go ahead of him in terms of development. Perhaps an extra turn of gaining gold, a few extra points from my bishop could prove vital in the end game. All in all, a free turn is good. So seeing himself stall, my opponent picks up a couple stables, which I think is the correct thing to do, something I'm also considering here because I'm not too convinced of the draw in my deck. Ranger requires both of the guys to show up to draw cards. Sauna and Avanto are slowly becoming more and more spaced out. Heralds are not guaranteed to find the draw cards. So I would like a little bit more insurance in my deck, a little bit more draw. Stables fills that role. Menagerie can also do it as well, but Menagerie may not draw, especially now given that I have 4 goals in the deck. So here, I'm just counting to see how many cards I can discard with the vault. And now I'm counting a bit more carefully because I'm thinking about picking up 3 provinces. So I reason that if I keep the Menagerie and the Herald in hand, I can, not the Herald, the Menagerie and an Avanto in hand, I can draw, what, 3 plus 1 plus 1 from the Herald, 5 cards, safely. I can safely do that. If I was a gambling man, I maybe could have discarded actions to the vault and then hoped that the Herald would find it. In which case the Herald would take 2 cards off the deck, and I could have discarded more with my vault, but that's not guaranteed, so I'm not going to do it. Final action here for me is the bishop, and I just try to see whether or not I can get up to $24 to pick up 3 provinces. I think me picking up 3 provinces is going to be quite commanding here. It puts my opponent under quite a bit of pressure, I feel, because if I'm able to pick up 3 now and then 3 on my next turn, that's 6 provinces, and his 1 bishop isn't going to make up any kind of points that 6 provinces generates. However, I'm not able to see quite enough money to do that, so I'm just going to take 2 provinces and pick up our stables for the draw. This is a great hand, so the deck is behaving very nicely in the end game here. Didn't behave so nicely early on, but it's doing so now, and I'm happy to see that. So here my opponent makes the play, picking up 2 provinces and another bishop. So he wants to play 2 bishops a turn here. I'm not sure if he has enough actions to do that. He also has to rely on heralds behaving nicely. But this turn here, this is endgame practice for all of us here, right? Even for me, and I'm still not sure what I did was the best thing to do here. So what I end up doing here is, again, playing it safe with the vault and getting up to 26 coins and 3 buys. So if you want, you could pause the video, think about the position and what you would do with the 26 and 3 buys. What I ended up doing was picking up 3 provinces. I saw my opponent had 20 coin last turn, and I thought, with whatever little time that I had, that if he uses his bishops on goals, he will not have enough money to pick up however many points he needs, even with the duplicate that he has. So I think 3 provinces here would give me enough of a lead. I calculated a little bit, and with a good draw, he could still win using both the bishops and his duplicate to gain duchies. He could still win, I believe, but I figured that that would require quite a good draw. He would need things to come in a specific order. He would perhaps need all his heralds to hit, for example, and for his heralds to not show his bishop prematurely, things like that. So I figured here that taking 3 provinces was the thing to do. Alternatively, I considered taking 1 and 2 duchies, but I didn't like it because if my opponent could have a good turn next turn, he can put himself into a good position for the endgame, a better position for the endgame with his extra bishop and the extra gain from the duplicate. He could perhaps use bishop on 2 goals, get a couple duchies from the duplicate, a couple more duchies from buys. He doesn't have to attack the provinces, and he would have quite a big points buffer just from alternative victory points. Alternative here meaning non-provinces. So I figured, look, go for the 3 provinces. It is pretty difficult for him to win. Maybe he might not win, and in the event that he doesn't win, there's only 1 province left in the pile. You only need to get 8 coin and you could close out the game. So that is what I end up going for. I'm not sure if it was 100% safe to pick up the 3 provinces. I don't think so, but I haven't checked everything carefully enough to know that. If you had a better play at that point in the game, please let me know in the chat below. As it is, my opponent stalls out on this turn here, and I have a fortunate draw to be able to find enough money to pick up the last province. So that is how game 3 ends. Pretty tense in the end game here. And I think my opponent should have picked up the heralds instead of the bishop a little bit earlier. But aside from that, we played nearly identically. Anyways, that is game 3 of the mini league. Thank you for watching, and I will see you.